Obviously, when you're talking to somebody in the third year, the focus is architecture and not landscape much. But you need to start making them observe that what around the building is making the building the building.
Right.
Like the landscape of Taj Mahal makes Taj the building that it is. And when I mean the landscape of Taj, I'm not talking about the greens which are there in the complex. The location of the building, how it is placed, where it is placed, how far is the gate of entry to this particular place, how the entire land modulation is taken care of.
How the visitors are moving around.
Yes. And how do you make the visitor see the building at any given point in time?
Correct.
Everything that architecture needs to be, the surprise element, the element of changing the datum for, because at the entry point also that way beyond there is a water body.
Right.
But your journey through that architecture to reach there is choreographed in such a way that you just enjoy the entire experience of that place. And then the greens marrying the red color of the architecture, that is again something which adds character to the place. However, there was this snail which infested the site.
Snail?
Yes.
Okay.
And that ate the lily away.
Oh.
So bringing in lily meant that the snail infestation would eat the lily. So there would have to be alternates to the lily that had to be found. The word architecture, the way he saw it, was because it is the science of space making. So you understood landscape, what it means. Now within that landscape, the art of space making is where the word architecture comes in from. Correct. So that's how the landscape architecture science is.
Hello everyone and welcome to Landscape Guru, a podcast where we explore people, ideas and stories that shape the world of landscape architecture. In today's episode, we are joined by architect Minesh Chenani, a landscape architect, educator and a practicing professional who believes in designing not just for people but for all living forms that share a space. In conversation with him, we have discussed about a role of time in landscape, realities of budget, and also how young minds can build their clarity and confidence in the field. So stay tuned and watch the full conversation. Hello, I'm Mrunal and welcome to the show Landscape Guru. Today we have architect Minesh sir with us. Welcome to the show, sir.
Same here. Thank you.
Okay, so let's start with a very simple question. I ask this to every guest that we have here. If someone is very clueless about this field, who doesn't know what landscape architecture is, how would you describe our role as landscape architects?
It is difficult to define the role of a landscape architect as such. However, the most important thing is for people to understand what landscape is, they need to understand what landscape is. And this conversation changes with the person in front of me. Like for example, if it is a layman asking me, what do you do? So the interest goes to explain them, everything that you see around you which is green, the gardens, parks, national parks. So we have to do all things for them, right. Whether it is a resort or it is any other green space, So the intent of a layman comes ki iska business kya hai. So to understand that, you have to definitely tell what is your core business about.
Correct.
If it comes to going in a studio in a college and telling what landscape is, the first thing which I tell them is, because the focus is always on architecture, it's on the building. So then I explain them that landscape is the world around you, which I quote from Garrett Egbo's book, The Urban Landscape, because that is something which stayed with me even during education, that you are intervening in a fabric, whether it is an urban fabric, whether it is rural, peri-urban, whatever. The place where you intervene, you're already intervening in a landscape. Okay. So a person may not have the entire knowledge of ecology, etc., to do anything with, but just that you're in a larger landscape and you're intervening there changes a lot of perspectives. So a lot of students then tell me that, we went here, we saw this, and this is the place where our site is. So they explain it's hills and mountains and rivers. So I tell them, yes, that's what landscape is. Even the first thing which in most of the studios which I tell them is, from where does the word landscape originate? So definitely I tell them, open your phones, look at Google, and then the first thing which even Google pops up is landscape is the world around you. And then the next thing that the Google thing defines is the landscape was a form of painting. So I tell them, if you look at the word landscape, the paper orientation of landscape and portrait, and you say that it is the painting, then tell me what was painted in a why was the orientation of paper called portrait and landscape? Because at that given point in time, when people used to orient the paper and the canvas that way, they used to always have the pleasure to paint something which is more scenic. So I tell them, now your building will sit in that. So that is what landscape
That is something really interesting. Even I heard it for the first time. Like the picture of landscape is really evolving and very different for everybody.
Right. And it also comes from the readings of Humphrey Repton, when the first time we read that landscape is everything. Uh, Landscape is agriculture, landscape is horticulture, landscape is everything. It is, even if a person does not practice landscape architecture as such, a person can do land engineering.
Right.
And there's so many perspectives. The only problem that is presently there with the understanding of landscape, which I feel, in my personal opinion, is that landscape, the way the profession is placed, it's placed that you finish your BH education, and BH is a prerequisite to most of the places where you want to get into landscape. That's also about the policy making process, where people want, that the registration continues ahead, and then they get into the landscape architectural practice. However, there are places and universities where people from other fields are also allowed to take into landscape, people who are botanists, ecologists, and we have landscape architects who are ecologists and botanists and from various allied fields. So it makes a lot of difference when they come and talk to us and explain us what really landscape as a science means.
Yeah.
So, and definitely, there was a point in time when we had gone for an interview by a landscape professional, and at that given point in time, Sir had mentioned that it is about uh, the word architecture. The way he saw it was because it is the science of space making. So you understood landscape, what it means. Now within that landscape, the art of space making is where the word architecture comes in from. So that's how the landscape architecture science is.
Right. So let's talk about your journey in architecture. How did you come across this path, and how landscape was part of your journey?
So till third year of architecture, we were more into, so the first exercise that we had done in the first sem, like the first very exercise that you go into architecture into was a public plaza at Fort, the Kalagoda place, where the parking happens. Now there we started understanding that it is, and we had very nice, interesting people in our studio like Jalaria sir and people. And they used to keep telling us, when you walk the DN road, what do you see and what is the relationship of the buildings between them and things like that. And you suddenly fall into a place which is enclosed between buildings, and the only dialogue that this space is having is with the buildings.
Right.
And the rest of the interaction is of the people within that particular fabric. So that was very interesting. However, at that given point in time, there was no understanding. And through the journey of architecture, there came different kinds of competitions which sensitized towards more about what the open spaces within the city is. So whether it was the open spaces or whether it was spaces for women and how they move and loiter around in the city, or it was about to deal with the waterfronts in the city. So they kind of sensitized us in the first 2 years of architecture. Later on, what became even interesting is that in the third year, we were given a site which was a horticulture institute. It was a very large site. And
Acha.
that was a time when the understanding of the terrain came in during the landscape studios. And I said that it, and since the time the education had focused more on open spaces, this time we were dealing with quite a considerable footprint in architecture. Uh, I spent more time in resolving what is outside the building rather than focusing on the building. And then through the various things that I spoke with my guides at that given point in time, what also happened was different people sensitized towards sensitized me towards whether it's an urban context or whether it is a rural context. So the context understanding came from there. So then it became that now no longer do I want to practice building by the end of third year. There's more fun in the context than in the building itself.
Likewise, even when I started practicing, I was working on building architecture, and side by side, I was also working on open spaces. But there, it clicked, and I got to understand that I'm more inclined towards, designing open spaces, or how that approach should be. And there, I think even I got, my insights that I need to be here.
Right.
So that is something actual practice gives you rather than theory.
Right.
So, sir, landscape is one of the few design fields where time plays a major role. Plants grow, seasons change, spaces evolve. So, how do you see this idea of designing for time and not just for a fixed period?
The idea of time needs to come from day one, and it needs to come in play with everybody who has been designing the space. So it comes from the time when the analysis of the site happens. So there's this point in time when we were doing a nice project and we were to look at the place, and this was definitely Nasik.
Okay.
And Nasik ka landscape keeps changing. It is browns in one season, it goes green in one
Right.
season. So to understand the notion of time, you need to observe places across time. So the more you visit places, you understand how that place will evolve over time. It's one thing is that the colors which change. It is also about the quality of sky which changes.
Right.
The place where you are, the location of it, whether you are on a hill station, whether you are at a plainer area, the notion of the sky keeps changing. They add a lot of value to building architecture, and it also adds a lot of value to the landscape space.
Right.
Again, the choice of material in the way the place changes across the seasons and through the day, it makes a lot of difference, because at some given point in time your landscape needs to become a foreground to the structure. Sometimes the sky is a background to the structure.
Right.
It needs to add some value and character, and even the building becomes a background to your landscape space.
Correct.
And how people perceive the landscape space from there. So that is the preliminary thing which everybody is going to observe, because a person at one given point in time is going to be at that particular place at that moment only. So
Right.
like for example, I don't know how many people would have visited the India Habitat Center. It's a one in a lifetime experience, right? It's not a daily thing that's going to happen to you.
Right.
So even for that, you need to understand the relationship of how things are changing in the day. The second very important thing is it changes across many years also.
Right.
For a plant to grow, it takes at least 3 to 4 years for a shrub to become bushy and things like that. It needs a lot of care and maintenance over there.
Right.
So in our practice, what we've tried to do is that we've tried to give in proper handouts that you maintain your garden properly,
Right.
and you engage proper proper people to take care of your garden space, and it is all about, definitely then the cost effective thing also comes in place. It's not important who the contracting agent is, depending on the size of the place. But if it is a small space, even a mali can do the job. It's just that how experienced is this person and how much can he share more things with you.
Correct.
And at some given point in time, also what happens is uh, the place gets infested with pests, which you cannot predict at the time. So then these changes you really need to look at what you're really doing in such situations. So time is a multi-level factor. We have different levels of visitors based on what time are we doing things. Uh, we cannot predict nature that way.
Right.
So even if you're planting something at the wrong time, what's going to happen is somebody is going to feed on it. So,
So you mentioned about project in Nasik.
right.
So can you share some ideology or how that journey started?
So, I've been working with one of my friends who's a senior uh, architect. The first time when we collaborated was over this Panchvati area in Nasik.
Okay.
She found that this person is a little more sensitive to the way the place, the culture works, and that's what she liked a lot about it.
Acha.
And then principally she used to have me in projects to give her more insights about the site analysis process.
Okay.
So the first thing which we did was for a site in Badlapur, and she did not realize that how the water moves across the site and things like that. It was not at the foothills of any hill, but definitely there was a small hillock on the side, and the ridge bifurcated the water channels on both the sides.
Okay.
And the streams through the side moved to the main river, the Poi
Okay.
river, in this place. And then through that process, she understood that this person does the site analysis properly. It was a very short exercise that we met over. It was a plotting exercise, that which areas we can plot and we cannot plot, and how the driveway moves across. And then we had again tying up over this process in the project in Nasik. It was basically a competition where we were to present the environmental way of looking at the project. So it was more about understanding the site. So the site was rugged in topography, only had grasses and a few trees at the periphery of the site. When we were given this video by the client, we understood something very interesting is happening, that as you move higher and higher in this resort site, you see the Gangapur Dam, and that is where the interest opens. So I said, definitely your houses and the villas which are there of prime property and prime
Right.
concern should look and face at this. And then the question came that how do we manage the entire topography, because over there in this 45 acres land, the slopes were 1:2 and 1:5. I said, we have to do this because we have to see the Gangapur Dam. So imagine opening your eyes in the morning and then you looking at the Gangapur Dam and the sunrise over it would set in a thing that you are in a eco project and an eco-sensitive resort project. Also, one of the parts of the project was the eco-sensitive restaurant which they wanted. And the site had two major hills, two hillocks.
Okay.
So the stream then came towards the center and drained across. So that is when we took the decision based on the hydrological analysis that we'll put this building across the two
The stream.
across the stream and have the footing on the land.
Okay.
And then we design it in such a way that we can replicate the rocks. And through this, we have a water retention pond which will do the job of the rainwater harvesting. And across the rainwater harvesting pond, we will engage people who are coming, because the kids over there coming in the resort require some activity. So rain dance activity, playing with water, small puddle pools and things like that. And they'll make people walk across this entire experience of a nature-based river. And at the site peripheries, we'll have them in a jungle. So when you see this restaurant building, it looks like that you're in a jungle of a lot of trees. And this stream is flowing below this, something to replicate the idea of what you see in Uttarakhand and Uttaranchal.
Okay.
Those, and then the building was conceptualized in steel, sitting over a stone foundation. So it made the idea look more like a bridge over water kind of a thing, and then you would pass very close to the bridge to reach the villas, and the entire thing was choreographed in such a way that you have your flowering seasonals on the sides of the
Yeah, I was going to
driveway.
ask that how the landscape is playing, vital role in this, the
Right.
changing of color and season.
So I did mention to her at that given point in time. So we are doing a lot of these flowering plants and stuff like that. But we'll have to be very sensitive, understanding the nature that it is a resort. We need to have certain amount of attraction.
Right.
That is the first place where you'll have retaining walls. You'll be driving across the change in the levels of the land. So we can brand the initial branding. The way Taj has and things like that. We can do it over there. And the most beautiful part is that since it's a resort, we can afford the maintenance of the plants. So we can definitely look at these beds being changed. At least the periphery of the beds being changed to have different colors during different. So it becomes a different experience when different people are coming across the year. So that is supposed to be maintained in such a project. So that is where we found our interest over there in that project, and that was something very interesting.
Yeah, nice. So, I mean, the ideas that we came up with, and when we start to execute it on site, there is a very major thing that comes in picture is a value engineering.
Right.
The budgeting and landscape is something that is first to get cut off, or to get scaled down when it comes to the overall estimation and the budgeting of the project. So how do we keep up that? How do we sail through that?
The first thing is landscape is always looked at the last thing.
Last thing, correct.
And that is why the budget is something which is always like we spend so much on this, and that's why we are left with only so much budget, and this is not going to happen in this kind of budget. However, I've been blessed that such kind of cost cuttings have not happened in the project that I have worked on. But there are alternates. You need to understand what that particular place and that design is doing for you, and how can you do it in another way. There is always a way around doing a particular thing. So that is what I feel. For value engineering, you need to understand the focus should be on how to read an estimate and how to read the specifications independently to the functions that they are doing. So the material knowledge is more important than actual execution, is what I feel. You can definitely do value engineering.
Right. So I think वो जो point था ना कि the landscape is always at the last, and then you are not left with much of money because you have already spent it on so many things. I think this needs to be changed somewhere. Landscape as also should be given some importance to it, and it should not be the last piece of or a last bite of the project.
Right. And somewhere I also feel that how the project is conceptualized for the people is more important in the project execution timelines. I definitely understand that the civil needs to happen before we get the plants in, because they're living creatures.
Right.
They will not be able to take too much dust of the civil works going around you. But if there's a place which can be which will not get affected by other civil works, start planting there, because it will take time to grow. We need to understand that environment, the non-human habitants of that environment can have a lot of impact on our plants. So that needs to come in as a knowledge first. We do. So what has also happened across, what I feel is, because some of the projects that I've been working with are in the government sector, they come up with their own set of plant list, which is the district schedule of plants. And sometimes it is more easier to work with those plants instead of getting rate analysis for local plants. And definitely it depends upon how the entire project also is concerned. But the easier option is to do the plants which are available. Even in a commercial project, the easier path is to go to a nursery, find out which plants are available, and then get them to our site, the nearest nursery that's available. So we kind of fixate our plant list based on what we are seeing in places around. Now that environment around it has been suited for that plant, but not necessary that it will suit your place also.
Right.
So there was this project that we were doing in Fort where we were planting the Zaphranthus, which is a small lily plant. Usually the lily grows very easily in
Right.
most of the commercial projects, and this was also like an institution project. There are nursery men taking care of the plants and the site every day, day in and day out. So there was no problem that we saw in the maintenance of it.
Okay.
However, there was this snail which infested the site.
Snail.
Yes.
Okay.
And that ate the lily away.
Oh.
So bringing in lily meant that the snail infestation would eat the lily. So there would have to be alternates to the lily that had to be found. So then, because then what was important was not the flower of the lily, it was the
Correct.
blades of the grass line.
Acha.
So then we replaced it with the mundu grass.
Huh.
So that's important. What in that plant is adding character also.
Correct.
Because one is that if it would have been a project, where the flowers are very important, then it would have been important to get the flowers. But if that's not the case, then we can always do away with the flowering idea and get something which is to add the textural quality of it. So we need to know a material palette to say that value engineering la sakte hain in the project.
And also the behavior of the plants, as we spoke about, trees also behave in a very interesting manner.
Right.
Like if we transplant a tree, they get a shock. Like if I am living here for 20, 25, 30 years and you pick me up and put it in some other city or country, I will be in that shock period. I'll have the time to adjust to my surroundings. So trees also behave in such manner, and it plays a very interesting role in our site also. So have you experienced something like this in your practice?
We had a project in which we transplanted a tree. The beauty of transplantation was the tree did not survive. But what happened after that was, I wouldn't say that the tree did not survive, as in the main branches of the tree did not survive after the
Okay.
transplantation.
Huh.
So what happened was that the branching started at the lower level, which was not expected. And it was a robust tree. It was the Ficus religiosa, the people tree.
Huh.
Simple to transplant,
Huh.
kind of a situation, and the transplantation was about a few meters on the site,
Okay.
not much.
Okay.
We followed all precautions the way we need to follow the precautions for.
Correct.
However, higher branches did not survive much, and then we saw the rotting of the leaves on the higher branches. Then came the rainy season, and the fear that if the branch falls, then what do we do? Everything that is being constructed below will also get affected because of the
Right.
branch falling. So they chopped off the branches. As soon as that further stress was added to this tree, then the tree's beauty started coming in place. The branching came from all the different nodes, and this entire tree and the lower bark completely became green. And that is something which I also shared on the World Environment Day on my post, that this is what nature is. So where there is grey, there is green, and there is brown, and all that as a summation is what the environment is. And how it will behave, you never know.
You never know, exactly.
Whereas the rest of the trees also we planted a few meters away they were copper pods. They behave absolutely normal, like nothing had happened to them. So it's about, you can follow the same procedures. There is a way of doing things, but you cannot predict what is going to happen. You need some time for them to grow.
So we understood your perspective and how landscape is from your lens. How do you take it into the architecture studios, and how do you take your students through your journey?
See, the most important thing about the profession is that every profession needs to contribute back to from where the learning starts.
Hmm.
And that is the most important reason why I chose to become an academician also while being actively in practice.
Hmm.
Now the thing is, our journey is across years.
Right.
That cannot go to the student in say 2 semesters of the allied design class, as we say in third year of architecture right now. The syllabus demands for. Previously, the syllabus had prerequisites when we were students. It defined that this is what you need to look at. You need to look at terrain analysis. You need to look at the history of landscape architecture. Now it becomes more interesting because there is no specific guideline. You know, these are the various things which you need to introduce to the students. Becomes more interesting to introduce to the students in the language that they'll understand, is beneficial to them. What they make out of it is completely up to the students, is what I think. See, even what we made out of what we learned is what is our learning and our growth in the profession. But it is important to introduce them in a way that they find it at least interesting. So everything cannot be told to the people. I feel that it is more important to make them experience it for themselves. If you make a person observe, it's much better than making him do an exercise.
Right.
So the initial conversations in the few weeks of the studio with the students is more about, have you seen this? Which is the place that you have been to? What did you see? Like, you can't teach a person an infinity pool if he's not been in an infinity
Right.
pool. If he's not understood that the infinity pool is not about the parapet design.
Correct.
It is about the capturing of the borrowed view from the landscape around. But for him, it could mean, it's just the edge of the site, and that's what infinity is. So the first thing is to understand who is being where.
Right. It is all about exposure.
It's all about the exposure. It is all about the observation. It is sometimes telling somebody that, have you experienced that there is a slope in your bathroom? Because the first thing that everybody goes daily to the washroom. Right? So in the bathroom, how does the water flow? Towards where it flows? Can your feet make that out? See, till now you've been using it, you don't make it out. But as then every part of your body has to respond to what you're feeling. How the ankle is twisting across a particular place. It's very simple as an analogy that if you're doing a guided tour at a resort, say it's a vineyard, okay? Most of the people working in the vineyard are wearing boots.
Right.
So they don't mind having the steps made in MS grill, which is right. It's cost effective also to access the plinth. And usually the plinths are high for unloading and loading reasons. But when you do a guided tour, you cannot have people walking on the same MS grills also. Because
Correct.
now the people who are doing this guided tour, there would be a lot of women wearing stilettos.
Right.
So there is no sensitivity towards those, or at least make them change the shoes. There should be a orientation towards what to wear, what not to wear.
Correct.
So I think that is the first thing which I try to do in the studio. That orientation is more important to get them aligned.
Correct.
And once they get aligned to it, they will start looking at everything as observations in architecture and landscape. Obviously, when you're talking to somebody in the third year, the focus is architecture and not landscape much. But you need to start making them observe that what around the building is making the building the building.
Right.
Like the landscape of Taj Mahal makes Taj the building that it is. And when I mean the landscape of Taj, I'm not talking about the greens which are there in the complex. The location of the building, how it is placed, where it is placed, how far is the gate of entry to this particular place, how the entire land modulation is taken care
How
of.
the visitors are moving around.
Yes. And how do you make the visitor see the building at any given point in time?
Correct.
And most of these things which are there are through observation that I have learned.
Right.
And sometimes, these images stick to you in your head. It's about re-looking at these images in the perspective. The lens needs to change. The image doesn't need to change.
Right. Right.
So it's about fine-tuning and cleaning the lens for the student first.
So this observation or the absorption of your surroundings is more important, because as designers, most of them, we rush to a solution.
Right.
If we see a problem, or if we see that okay, I have to plan a drainage system for this kind of a pathway, I'll quickly draw that section in my head and I'll start giving solution to that query or a problem. But how much time I spend on site and observe what exactly is the route of the water flow, or how it is naturally going right now. So I think all these things are more important than going back to your desk and started thinking on the solution. So how this process has to be.
I feel now our life is a little more easy when it comes to understanding the site. One is if the sites are in Mumbai, it's not very complicated to understand a
Right.
few things, because the systems are in place, and the context is not, the context would be complex in terms of its urban morphology, and understanding whether it is at the node of something, what should be the character of that particular building and the landscape, what is the value of that building that we are looking at, like for example, if you're doing a hotel in Bombay versus a residential building or a commercial building, it would be very different in the approach. But when it comes to complex sites outside the city, where traveling to becomes constrained, that you have X number of travels before you can do. Our life is now easy. We have a camera, and so many times I've found that the clients themselves give us photographs as things are changing around. They are observations. So it is about sitting with those photographs, sitting with the site, understanding that particular place, sitting with the Google map, zooming in, zooming out, to understand where exactly you are. What is your immediate context? What is the entire understanding of the drainage?
Right.
Right. If it is an exercise where the drainage is in concern, if it is an exercise where planting is concerned, then you need to understand what is the soil.
Correct.
Definitely have to visit different nurseries around to understand in that same soil typology how things are growing. And in case there is an admixture added to the soil to make it beneficial to the plant growth, then that has to be understood and informed to the client side. And to this, if it is a discussion in the studio at that given point in time, you need to make the student sensitive that that this soil typology requires a certain amount of admixtures, and that would mean costing. However, without doing that, you can't get your final output even close to what is your imagination.
Correct.
So it is about, like for example, in one of our studios, when we used to discuss things that how to do planting, and I had done a course in horticulture before, so it was like the easiest person to go and ask names of plants is to go to me and ask, right? Because I had seen typical BMC gardens during the horticulture course, and I picked up, okay, these plants are easily grown in this city. Now the place where I did masters was a different city. Now these plants could not be there, because definitely about the climate, and the soil is also different. The soil over here is red soil. The soil where I did masters in Ahmedabad is a very grainy sandy soil. So the soil conditions change. So the point is, can you grow those plants there? Yes. Your care needs to change. Your thought process needs to change. So there was a dialogue between how to do planting. So our professor mentioned that her professor used to tell that sit with it, understand the soil first, understand the geology first. What is the soil? From where is it coming? And how can you do the planting? If it is a client requirement that this needs to be a tropical garden, you can't say no to the person,
Right.
but understand that which part of the species can be selected in such a way that they can grow in the local soil. What part of it you need to do admixtures, how much admixtures need to be added, and how do you really go about with the entire process of the plantation.
So as you mentioned, you have studied horticulture also. So do you have two different lenses to look at open spaces, or is it a combination of both? I mean, as design architect, landscape architect, and a horticulturist.
They both play a very important role in my life. I would say, what is the project? Like, even if it's a studio project and somebody is telling me that it's a small site, in a hostel building, we're just doing a courtyard. Now the lens comes that of a horticulturist. Because now the only thing that is my design is the plant.
Right.
And my plant needs to just pop out in that particular design. So that is with the lens of the horticulturist. But when it becomes a larger site, acres and multiple acres together, then comes the lens of a landscape architect, where the understanding of most of the knowledge is supposed to play a very important role.
So is it a separate kind of conscious call when you are sitting on that project that this will be thought of later on? Right now, this is the goal, or this is the process that we are following. Is it something like that?
No. The only place where I feel the point where things need to line up is, or if I have to look at something very differently during the time, is the entire geometry of the design. If I have to resolve a complicated geometry on the site, then that is something I like to sit separately with. Otherwise, I really can't see one thing not happening with the other. Like, for example, I can't look at stormwater not being integrated with the other MEP. Not look at the planning of the driveway with the ICDCs.
Right.
Right? They all are going to be there in a site.
Yeah.
They all are a part of the site. They all are going to be visually seen. So where they need to be located is very important. And that most of these chambers which are there have to be accessible.
Correct.
So hiding it behind plant makes no sense.
Correct.
So, and how do you do it is another question. It is, I think, mostly by observation that you realize that how do you do things.
And this comes with experience also. And but what happens to the students? Like, how they kind of develop this perspective of looking at things, because they come up with these easy solutions कि प्लांट के पीछे लगा देंगे या इसको ड्राइवे के बाहर छुपा देंगे, but that doesn't happen. So how do you take your students through that?
For them, I think the key is observation skills. So what I tell them is, if you're going to bring on my table one solution for this, I am not going to accept it. See, even at the age which they are and the level of maturity that they have in the entire science of building architecture, it's very raw. I feel, how do you look at this rawness? So I tell them, get at least a set of 50 images. One is because nobody going to get 50 images. They are at least going to get 5 if I ask for 50. And then in those 5, decode how things are done. And I really feel that if we understand and teach them the way of decoding things, then most of a battle is fought. Because through your life, you're going to only be dissecting a space.
Right.
And that you develop once you are in practice. Because in practice you always want to question, अभी इसने ऐसा बोला तो क्यों बोला, और फिर ये स्पेस में ये चीज़ इधर क्यों मीनिंगफुल है. But why can't we empower our students with that skill when they are students? Because the most important thing is make people ask questions.
Right.
If they develop their rational, then nothing is more important.
Correct.
Because if they don't develop rationals, then you're not teaching architecture, then you're making draftsmen. Are you really making draftsmen or making architecture?
Right. So, do you see a stark difference between the educational system or the students' behavior in recent days compared to maybe 5-10 years earlier? Because AI has now taken over a lot of things, and I think students are more comfortable in googling their question rather than approaching to someone and finding a solution or answer to that.
The only observation which I think is the pace at which people want the answer back
Right.
is changing.
Hmm.
There is no patience, and I think that's also right. Why should you have the patience when you can get things validated for you very quickly? There is no need, there's no desperate need to run to a library to find an answer. There is no need to pick up a book and understand why what is there in the terms that AI is available. Now the flip side of it is, for AI to function, you need to know what to ask.
Right.
If you don't ask the right thing,
Yeah.
you will not get the solution for it. So now training the people to look at a book in a way that the person who's writing the book has asked questions to write the book becomes more imperative, because if they don't know how to ask, then they'll not know how to get the answer. And they'll get answers to anything. For example, there's one person who came to me and he's like, my thesis project is the conservation of biodiversity center. And my question was, okay, so what is your building going to do? Conserve biodiversity. So I said, how building a building can conserve biodiversity when its own footprint is going to destroy a certain amount of biodiversity?
Right.
No, we'll teach people in the building how to conserve biodiversity. But in the first place, did you? So the thing is that programmatically, whatever tool which is there, Google or AI, has given them the answer that okay, there is an X place in an X country where a biodiversity center has done interpretation of a particular biodiversity reserve, and in that biodiversity reserve XYZ is conserved after this interpretation center, which is important. So that fact is not that fact is not lost, that the building is important. But the fact that the sensitivity towards understanding what a biodiversity is, that is lost. So the thing is that enough decoding is not done because you want to move fast. The system wants to move fast. And it's also the duration of the semester is about say 16 weeks. You have to produce data. So you're moving at a speed. Now at every given point in time, your only weighted measure is the marks, which presently has become the situation. I can't even imagine at our given point in time somebody getting 98 and 99% in SSC and HSC. And I think we're very close to having 100% result of somebody getting in HSC and SSC. See, I am not saying that's wrong. But what happens in that case is what they did during the lower education, they forget. It is sublime.
Correct.
And that doesn't get retained. Because that doesn't get retained, architecture in principle is a application of all the sciences which you learned before. Even landscape. If you don't remember biology and plant taxonomy which you learned as a child, so all my horticultural knowledge came from my 3rd standard, 4th standard textbooks. When we were also being taught what is budding, where the bud is, where the apical bud is. So if you don't remember, if you ratify to pass an exam and get marks, then you're not going to remember.
Right.
And if you don't remember this for life, then I don't know where education is leading us towards in the entire conversation.
And I think that is why students do struggle when they pass out from a college and when they start practicing. Initial years they struggle a lot. finding that connection between theory and practice, because what they do is all theory, and that too for marks. उसमें से कितना वो seriously आगे जाता है, they only know.
And the other thing is that many people don't know why they want to do engineering, why they want to become a doctor, or why they want to become an architect. In the general sense of it, most of the people, the time when we were trying to become architects, there was a drawing exam. During the COVID period, there was no drawing exam. So anybody without drawing knowledge also, did an exercise in aptitude and became an architect. As he started his journey in architectural education. Further down the line, the way things were, before giving our entrance exams, we knew about which architect, at least we knew their names. Now I don't understand what exactly is being asked in those set of questions where some people don't even know the names. Or maybe they have, again, in the same format, they have memorized for the examination and forgot beyond.
Yeah.
So somebody at the third year also doesn't know Charles Correa. And if knows Charles Correa's name, doesn't know why Charles Correa is Charles Correa. And what is the work done by him? What was the major contribution? What was the building talking about? And how did that building sit in that particular landscape? Like for the most, one of the most important memories that I have of Charles Correa is experiencing at the first year, the Bharat Bhavan in Bhopal. That is where the interest of the entire play of architecture and the terrain starts. You enter the structure, you then move down to a lower court, and then you get into galleries, and then you are taken to the waterfront. And it's an experience, it's a journey. And you don't know from where you're getting into which space. It's everything that architecture needs to be. The surprise element, the element of changing the datum because at the entry point also you know that way beyond there is a water body.
Right.
But your journey through that architecture to reach there is choreographed in such a way that you just enjoy the entire experience of that place. And then the greens marrying the red color of the architecture. That is again something which adds character to the place. And then you see a lot of people who use that in their practice, where brick is the predominant material or red cladding of Agra stone is one of the predominant materials, and then you soften that material with the use of evergreen plantation, and green plants, green broadleaf plants, to kind of scale that entire experience of that red down. And that's what we are learning from masters. That learning is going to continue. The key is, how do we translate this for our students? How do we translate this in our practice?
Generally, students struggle in finding this interest. When they get out of a college, they don't know what to do as a specialization. So they work for 2 years in one category, say
I think they work only for 1 year.
Yeah. 1 year. Then they want to explore something else. Then they want to explore something else. And they keep hopping on all these verticals of architecture. But finding that key purpose or the key interest for themselves is really important.
It's also become a norm that I don't know from where this norm comes, frankly, but it has become a norm that, if you have done BH, maybe you're into certain amount of salary bracket. If you do MH, you're into certain amount of salary bracket. A lot of my friends and my seniors, they did not even bother about whether they want to do an MH or they don't want to do an MH. It was mostly for people who were very tuned to that, they want to get into teaching or into any kind of research further. They wanted to do MH. But a lot of my batchmates, they were like, we are doing BH, we are going to get into business, and that's where we're going to be. And whatever further learning is there, we'll do it from the BH course. So the further exploration के लिए MH करना वो necessary नहीं था. But now the trend, I think it's more of a fashion and a trend that you need to.
Also the peer pressure.
Yeah.
Everybody
that's-
around me is doing, so I want to go.
And the worst is you don't know where to go.
Yeah.
So you pick up Australia and Singapore, and you
Hmm.
pick up the UK, the US, and you just want to
Out
go.
of random interest, nothing to do with the studies. That was such a meaningful and thoughtful conversation with you, Minesh sir. And thank you for sharing your ideologies and experiences, and also your perspective on landscape architecture.
Welcome for having me here. It was a pleasure talking to you. And it's about these conversations are the things that make us also retrospect what
Yeah.
exactly have we been doing. And it's a beautiful journey.
Thank you so much. Hope you all have realized how landscape improves your quality of life. For more such conversation about the field, do like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel.